No, so I've got a couple pieces you can choose from.
This might be the craziest thing I've ever done for a piece of wood, and I made some guitars with it. But before we get back to Blacktail Studio with Cam, I should probably explain how this all started. If you haven't seen my channel recently, I've been building guitars with my buddy Sean. We're both big fans of Blacktail Studio and wanted to make some guitars inspired by him. And by him, I mean Cam. He does a lot of builds that feature really pretty wood along with black resin, and I thought it would look perfect as a guitar, because he's even made some tables inspired by luthiers. I started by ordering his dovetail jig and figured I could incorporate it into the neck somehow. And by the way, that's what we're currently working on at this point, the neck. I just knew I couldn't stick with bland, straight grain walnut for this. If it was going to be a Blacktail Studio guitar, then I needed to reach out to the man himself for some ideas. So I reached out to him on Instagram and he surprisingly responded. I told him I was going to make a guitar inspired by his furniture and donate it to charity. Then he promptly responded by offering me some chunks of some crazy looking Bastogne Walnut he had left over from a prior project of his. If only I was able to get a hold of a chunk of Cam's wood, then I could make the most Blacktail Studio guitar ever. Problem was, when I told him I'd pay for shipping, he realized I was over 29 hours away by car and told me local pickup only. Bet. We are about, what do you say, 8 hours out from Cam's house?
Yeah, probably.
And it's been a long freaking drive.
Very long.
We're coming up on Boise, and we're gonna stay at a hotel tonight. We gotta be by Cam's at 10 in the morning. And I'm hoping I'm not being scammed by a robot.
Alright, I went through my stuff. This is from one of my recent projects. It's a pretty special piece to me, so.
Oh, hell yeah.
So
Is this the duck fur from
Yeah.
about to say from the stairs?
Yeah.
This man knew how far we traveled and decided to fuck with me.
Dude, that actually would be pretty cool.
You're
We bought your...
way too nice. That's not what I'm giving you. This is firewood.
Oh, okay.
No, so I've got a couple pieces you can choose from. This, probably the nicest piece I got.
Oh, wow.
This is also from a past project. This is Bastogne.
So what did
And the like super nice stuff.
what did that come from?
It came from this. More specifically, this giant ass slab.
I think that's really cool looking.
You like that design? Okay. He is chosen. That's the one we're going with.
A quick 29-hour drive back, and I couldn't wait to slice this thing open and see its insides. I don't think Cam understood how much wood it actually takes to make a guitar. This slab was huge in guitar top standards. My jigsaw blade couldn't even cut all the way through it. That's when I decided to make 2 guitars instead of 1. I even asked Cam if he wanted the second one, and he said he believed it should go to a better home than his. More on that later. I carefully cut this thing up to salvage as many guitar tops as possible out of it. I think I probably have enough for about 7 or 8 guitars, because he also gave me a similar sized Claro walnut burl, which I'll show later on in a different video. This stuff is definitely like nothing I'm used to working with. I typically have locally grown and dried Missouri walnut, and unless it's grown near a river, it's the most boring wood you could look at. In fact, when we were driving through Oregon, I was amazed at how big all the trees were and how many lumber yards we passed. The place is a woodworking person's heaven, and the air is so clean. Other than downtown Portland. That place smelled a little bit. Regardless, I may convince the wife to move there one day. My idea for these guitar tops was a book-matched river table thingy. I wanted to combine traditional luthier ideas with Cam's signature look. If you're not familiar with what a book match is, it's where the wood is sliced vertically and then it's opened up like a book. And when it's opened up like a book, you have a near-perfect mirror match of grain and figure. In this case, the book match tops will be separated by a small river of black epoxy. I'm not very good with the whole epoxy thing yet, but I'm starting to get the hang of it. My black tint may or may not have thickened up in the cold weather, and I may or may not have used entirely way too much. Pro tip: make sure you move your laptop from the background before trying to get cool shots of epoxy. Also, Make sure you hold on to small cups of epoxy before attempting to mix it at all. This stuff is messy. I got the shop to about 77 degrees and started the pours. I was nervous with how thick this was. It could have potentially not hardened all the way, causing me to waste a bunch of this gorgeous walnut. Sean came back over to help me remove the tops from the molds, and we were pleasantly surprised. I ended up drum sanding them off camera, but I set them to the side to work on the rest of the body portions. I purchased some African mahogany from a local wood dealer to act as the bulk of the body. It's my favorite wood to use for this, but it's heavy as hell. I wanted to also spruce it up a bit with some strips of birch and birch veneer to give it a sort of racing stripe look to it. I've heard many guitar makers say to make one area the focus point of the guitar, and not to overkill the rest to draw too much attention away from the top. Well, I'm completely ignoring that. My plan was to add so many details to these guitars that no matter where you look, you'll be intrigued. Traditional standards are boring, and they're meant to be ignored sometimes. Except when you get a chance to use a hand plane. I could have just done 1,000 passes at the drum sander here, but this is more fun. I wanted a light colored wood to separate the top from the bottom, and figured since I already used birch in the body, I could use it to be sandwiched in the middle too. I got these down to about 1/8 of an inch so the separation would be visible but not overwhelming. I've heard to never use Type-On 3 for guitars, but it's all I've ever used and I haven't had any issues. That's not a sponsor, it's just an observation. My vacuum press has been on the fritz recently, so to glue these I needed to use a bunch of clamps and cauls to spread out the pressure. We nailed the two pieces together to keep from slipping under the clamps. And no, these nails won't be an issue as they're outside of where the guitar will actually lay on this. Every year around Christmas time, my local big box store has these clamps on sale and I typically buy 2 or 3 of them for the price of one. I'll probably continue this annual cycle of purchasing because I've only had enough for one guitar this time, and I definitely need enough for 2 or 3, just in case.
Looks good. It's nice and clamped.
These guitars are going to be chambered semi-hollow variants, meaning I needed to do some work before gluing the top on. As per usual, I hate changing out bandsaw blades, so I just tackled this with the Resaw King. I'm seriously considering getting a second bandsaw just to put a smaller blade on it. Is that overkill? Can someone tell me I'm not crazy for wanting that? I spend so much time getting a perfect resawing setup that I don't want to ruin it by changing the blade. The caveat is that it takes so much longer to cut out the guitar bodies, or anything with the slightest curvature. And for the love of everything holy, please don't tell me to watch Alex Snodgrass's method. I've seen it enough, and I've even bought his blade guides. That being said, I still hate changing bandsaw blades. Anyways, Sean is here at the drill press removing the bulk of the chambered portions with a Forstner bit. This takes out a lot of weight from the guitar, and it also makes it easier for the router bit to clean up later. Sean may look super cool here, but he doesn't want me to tell you how he tried taking too much off with the pattern bit at one time, causing bit slippage. That bit slippage drilled a hole all the way through the body. Luckily, it was directly over where the electronics cavity was going to be, so the only thing that truly hurt was his ego. While Sean was cleaning out the chambered cavities, I finally got back to these gorgeous tops. They're definitely instrument quality boards, and I have enough left over to try this without epoxy in the middle sometime. This portion of the guitar is my signature, and that's why Cam chose this body style. This lower cutout is great for sitting and playing, and it adds a decorative touch. Unlike major guitar brands, I'm not stingy with my designs, and I actually make and sell full templates for these. If you've been wanting to make a guitar yourself, my templates make it easy with just a router and flush trim bits. They include the body, neck pocket, humbucker cavities, and neck. I'll leave a link in the description if you're a woodworker who's been thinking about taking it on. Just be aware, I make all of these by hand and ship them out first come, first serve. I'm not Amazon fast, but I'll get it to you as quickly as I can. To make it an official semi-hollow, I needed to add some form of F-hole to the tops. Standard F-holes are boring, and I've been searching for my own design still. Sean mentioned this looks like the Pringles mustache, so a P for Pringles makes it a P-hole. And that's it. I'm still searching for my own P-hole. To make the top more delicate looking, I started chamfering the back of the P-hole with a chisel. It doesn't look pretty, but it doesn't need to. It's a P-hole. This is where I start getting really excited in the builds. Gluing on the top is kind of the part where there's no looking back. Any mess ups from here on out either has to be covered up or thrown away. It cannot be forgiven with sandpaper and patience. Making sure the center line lined up on everything is the utmost important detail in this step. It determines the entire outcome of the build. That's why I attached a template with double-sided tape and cut out and flush up most of the top. It allows for easier alignment later on. I wasn't sure if PVA glue stuck to epoxy. In fact, I'm almost certain it wouldn't, which is why I mixed up some resin to adhere to the black portion while the rest was Titebond. I left these little wood ears, as I like to call them, to nail the tops in place to prevent slippage again. These will be cut away later when the guitars come to final shape, which seems to be taking forever. As excited as I was with building these, I truly underestimated how long it would take to do two at the same time. Cam probably understands, due to all that time he went undercover as Johnny Sins. Two at the same time was likely a daily occurrence for him. In all reality, every step taken to make a decent guitar is already detail-oriented and time-consuming. I'll likely never do two guitars at once again, unless I'm doing two videos.
Oh yeah.
Okay, back to the necks. Making guitar necks is actually my favorite part of the build. I've always despised the standard black ebony or non-figured maple neck with dotted fret inlays. I like to add as much craziness and detail as possible to make them not only enjoyable to play, but also cool to look at. As different as I like to be, there are still some basic rules to follow, like adding a truss rod. If you're not a woodworker, let me tell you a little something about wood movement. Wood moves, and truss rods move it back into place. Let me introduce you to the bane of my existence. Mun ebony. This shit is harder than Wolverine's claws. Although beautiful, I spent hours cutting these frets out because my dinky little handsaw could only take off like 1/1000th of an inch at a time. At least it seemed that way. I actually broke a sweat by the end of this. If I had the volume up in the background, you'd likely hear my labored breathing. Time to start adding some real Blacktail Studio details. I was initially going to do a walnut bow tie inlay on the 12th fret with the Blacktail Studio bow tie jig. Seems simple enough, but if you remember, I like my necks to get a little crazy. As I was cutting the bow tie out, I started thinking about other ways to make it different. Something that would actually be more eye-catching than a simple bow tie. That's when I decided to do only the outline of a bow tie and fill it with denim dust. This is actually a cutoff of one of Cam's denim tables. He gave it to us on the way out the door. I first thought about doing a basic denim inlay, but this seemed to be a little more exciting. Using a rasp, I just dusted the edge into fine particles and piled them up in a little bowl. After that, I filled the bow tie outline with the dust and sealed it with clear, thin CA glue. This added a cool blue touch to the guitar, and I ended up doing it in the fret inlays as well, along with some binding you'll see later on. Guitar builds are filled with so many different glue ups. I should start reaching out to PVA glue companies for a sponsorship at this point. I know my channel is small, but damn it, I'm still pushing product. I've heard hide glue is the best for this, but I haven't tried. Does anyone out there know the best glue for fretboards? PVA hasn't failed me yet, but none of my guitars are 50 years old either. Once they dried up, I used my neck template to get them the final size. Luckily, the cuts were mostly straight, so I didn't have to worry about snapping my bandsaw blade again. This particular neck is made for a 22 fret, 25.5 inch scale length guitar. I guess you could do other scale lengths with it, but that's my favorite and that's what I'm making here. In fact, that's my go-to for every guitar I've made so far. And damn, that ebony is looking mighty fine. In the spirit of making things crazy, or in other words, making them harder than they need to be, I decided to make some binding out of birch and African mahogany. Essentially, I plan to layer a thin strip of the mahogany between two thin strips of birch, kind of like a golden Oreo. The birch will contrast with the neck and fretboard, and the mahogany will add depth. It also sticks with the racing stripe design of everything else. Plus, I didn't have to buy any more wood to make it. After they dried, Sean got to cutting them down to respectable, less girthy sizes so we could glue them to the fretboard. Yep, another damn glue up. And while he did that, I rabbited the edges with a small rabbiting bit. I don't remember the measurement here, but it looked like it was around 3/16 of an inch. Before we could glue the binding on, we had to remove a portion of the headstock. I've learned a lot of things the hard way, and this is one of them. Don't ask me how, or do ask me, but I won't tell you. I'm still traumatized. In fact, I learned most of things in life through failures and traumatic experiences. By traumatic, I usually mean very expensive mistakes. Like this one time I was removing some thickness from a headstock on another guitar made out of nearly priceless, extremely rare wood and almost cut the whole damn thing off, making it virtually unusable. When things like that happen, we as people tend to permanently readjust our approach. Don't be alarmed, this is the Super Slot Cutter 5000. Or it's actually a slot cutter that didn't have a big enough bearing, which I then made bigger with tape. It's either one of those. I had some trouble with the glue line on the binding, so I decided to hide it with a slotted channel of denim dust. After a little bit of work off camera, this is our progress. The one on the right is for charity, and the one on the left is for one of you. As a thank you for watching this far and giving my channel a shot, I'm giving the single cut away to one lucky subscriber. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, leave a comment at the end of the video, and submit an entry on thewoodenhobbyist.com. No purchase necessary, and you have to be at least 18 years old. Other than that, this could be all yours, and I'm even going to pay for the shipping. I'll leave a link to the entry form below, and we will be doing a giveaway drawing live on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2025 at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Anyways, I swear this says 2.7 degrees, but some weird camera stuff is going on, and I'm doing a raised Tune-O-Matic style bridge, so the neck needed to be angled down. This was easily accomplished by cutting a 2.7 degree wedge and sticking it underneath the neck pocket template. When I was at Cam's, he showed me his Shinto rasp and pointed out how he never uses it. So if you're watching, Cam, here's me using a Shinto rasp when I could just be using a grinder. At least it looks cool. And this comfort cut relief looked extra cool with the blend of the walnut, birch, and mahogany. You may notice a blue denim dust bow tie on the double cut. I did it off camera as I wanted to stay focused. It's placed in a manner where the bridge will be perfectly centered over it, giving it a pop of color over the Black River. I'm also routing some bowl-like recesses for the knobs and switches to be placed here. It's just another detail to add depth and character to the top. Back to the necks. For the inlays, I wanted to do denim dust with a brass ring around it. I remember in the Blacktail Studio denim table, Cam used brass accents on the tabletop and it looked gorgeous. So I found some 1/4 inch brass tubing to inlay and fill with the dust and CA glue. Best part is, all I had to do for this was drill 1/4 inch holes into the fretboard. Can't get much easier than that. I usually use a hacksaw to cut brass inlays out by hand, but due to having 2 necks to complete, I decided to try the bandsaw, and it actually worked flawlessly, minus the brass pew-pews flying around my shop at Mach 3 if they got caught between the blade and the table. This actually took longer than expected. I wanted to cram this stuff in to where it was dense enough to be a solid color, rather than looking like floating dust. So I just treated it as a layered task. Cram a little, glue a little, and repeat until it was slightly mounted over the top, and then sanded later. If you've seen my other guitar builds, you've seen this bit before. It's a white side table edge bit, and it's perfect for creating super thin, perfectly even guitar neck radii. Like that? Radii. I've been straying away from hand tools more and more because I like speed and efficiency. Gone are the days of rasping a neck into a C shape because routers exist, and they have for a long time. That being said, I definitely understand the love of hand tools. It's a whole different type of satisfaction. And I'm sure a hand tool purist feels the same way about a Dremel shaping a guitar heel that I feel about watching a CNC make every element of a guitar. But then again, I made my original guitar templates with my CNC before I got rid of it. Maybe I'm a fraud for that. Who cares? The guitars still look badass, and they play well, so that's all that matters. Speaking of hand tools, I may avoid them whenever possible, but I always use a small chisel to relieve the nut slot. But that's changing too, because I just got this cool little mini router plane that I couldn't wait to use for this. Just look at how satisfying and fun it is. I like a 12-inch radius on my fretboards. To any players watching, I'm curious on what your preference is, or if you even have one. Do you like the extra round 9-inch radius, or flatter like a 16-inch? Whatever it is, adding any radius to Mun Ebony feels like shoveling 3 feet of snow on a mile-long driveway. It's a lot easier to add the radius to fret wire though. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to cram a lot of small detail into these guitars. I altered these end cutters a while back to perfectly remove the ends of the fret tangs. That way, the fret tangs can be hidden behind the biting, allowing the sides of the neck to be uninterrupted by the ends of the frets. To me, it's a cleaner look that makes the guitar seem a bit more elegant. And if you're wondering, yes, I glued in the neck. I normally do bolt-on necks, but due to the angle I routed in the neck pocket, gluing seemed to be the cleaner option. This just meant I had to finish everything with the guitars mostly assembled. And if I were to do it again, I'd complete the fretwork first, because it was a pain in the ass to do this with everything assembled. Just like I said, I learned better from failures. Okay, we're almost in the home stretch. Nearly everything left is cleanup work and fine polishing stuff. This is my favorite part of fretwork because the tape release is uber satisfying. One last little surprise. I couldn't just do normal knobs off of Amazon for this thing when I had leftover walnut and denim. No, the knobs too needed detail and attention. I actually bought a lathe just for this build and just to make these knobs. The knobs incorporate nearly everything from this build. Denim, brass, walnut, and birch. I didn't have enough room for mahogany or ebony, but maybe another time. I made this little rectangle of walnut and birch and then cut out multiple little cubes from it. After that, I recessed the entry points and tapped a place for set screws to hold onto the volume and tone knobs. I've never made knobs before, but I've seen enough builders do this to give it a shot anyways. While those are being made, I wanted to do something Cam would normally do near the end of his videos. I'm not big enough to receive hate comments yet, but I'm sure they're coming. But I got a comment recently that boosted my ego a little bit. Bob Ross of Guitar Builders, to Steven Davidson, I say thanks. I glued a brass plate and denim to the little cubes, and this is what I got. I've cut brass with every other power tool in my shop, so I was betting the lathe could do it too. I'm going to shut up for a second and show you how satisfying this is. And just like that, a little Blacktail studio knob. She needs some polishing, but you get the idea. I know Cam has gone to UV finish recently, but I knew I needed to use Rubio Monocoat, because that's what I've seen him use in most of his videos. And check out this grain reveal. Okay, last steps. When I was about to purchase all the hardware for this build, Guyker, a guitar parts company, reached out and offered to send me a bridge and some tuners to show in the video. Although I got these for free, they're not paying me and asked me for an honest review. Honestly, I'm excited and disappointed at the same time. The items are top-notch quality for the price, and I honestly mean that. But I told them I was using 3 left and 3 right tuners, but they sent me 6 inline instead. Frustrating because they ship from China and I was not about to wait on replacements. These guitars were taking long enough as is. I even purchased N3 Nano from Cam's website and didn't even get to use it in time for this video. And Cam, if you are watching this, I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity and keep doing what you do. Thanks for watching.